G'day Bomber fans, that is our fifth straight loss. The Bombers were up and about for 3 quarters of footy, but in the end the better side won. The Suns cruised to a 41-point win after a fourth quarter demolition, a fourth quarter massacre. There were plenty of positive signs, I'll talk about that. You know, the kids are really impressive again, but there's also a lot to dislike about how the game turned out as well. And, you know, the 41-point margin is a big part of that. So let's talk about the game. Remember to leave your votes down in the comments below with the role player attached as always. Quarter by quarter recap. It was a scrappy start. I don't know what happened to that marble surface, but it was slippery. Neither team could get any control on the footy. It was frenetic to start the game. Goals were hard to come by while teams got used to the weirdly wet conditions. We were the first team to hit the scoreboard. Ben Hobbs got a free kick to give us the lead. Nate Caddy took a strong mark to give us our second later on in the quarter. And Old Gold set up young Angus Clark for what looked like the last goal of the term. But with just seconds remaining, the Suns would snag a late one, taking a 1-point lead into quarter time. That was a common theme throughout the day, by the way, red time goals. The second, it was really frustrating. We had complete control early. The ball was living down our forward half. We were getting really good looks at the goals. We just couldn't capitalise early. Clark missed one he should have kicked. Caddy missed one he should have kicked. Peter Wright missed one, and usually he can kick them anywhere. The Suns kicked 3 of the first 4, but we should have had it our way. It took a bit of a Nate Caddy spark to get us going on the scoreboard. He nailed one from outside 50, and then a few cheapies to end the quarter. Kept us within a goal at half-time. It was 41-45, but really I thought we looked the better of the two teams in that second term. The third was a really enjoyable and free-flowing quarter of footy. Isaac Kako was getting involved. Archer May turned into prime Dermot Brereton and kicked 3 goals in 5 minutes. Jai Caldwell put us in front, but just as we did all day, we let the Suns get one late in end-time footy. Their key forwards really were having a field day. King kicked his third to put the Suns in front at 3-quarter time by just 3 points, and everything was set up for a ripping final quarter of footy. But unfortunately, the Bombers scheduled in the siesta a bit too early. It should have been a close game. You know, it should have been a close finish, but we ended up scoring just 1 point in the final term. The Suns scored 6 goals. It was a really poor way to end an otherwise pretty promising game. They just cruised home. They made light work of us and made the scoreboard look a lot more one-sided than what play suggested it should be. 74-115 in the end. They put an end to the morale of any rogue fans who thought finals was a sneaky possibility. So let's talk about this game, where it was won and lost, what we should like and what we should dislike. Let's do it differently today. Let's start with the negatives and end on a high. And that way you like to stick around to hear the good things to like about this game. The big negative for me is the way we close out periods of the game. So an issue for the Bombers this year is how we end quarters. That's been a constant, and the amount of goals that we concede in time on. And every single quarter this game, we gave up late goals, or what should have been goals, to the Suns. The first 3 quarters, the Suns kicked the last goal, and it was always after the 30-minute mark of regular time. The last quarter, Ned Moyle we did have a shot late after the 30-minute mark and should have scored but missed. It probably could have been kicked. So that is just a clear issue with our game that doesn't seem to hold up late, and it's hard to really put a finger onto why that is, whether it's players, seeing the clock and going into their shell, or maybe a directive from our opponents to just go full pelt, knowing, full well that we'll be leakier than usual. It's pretty frustrating and really saps the energy out of a huddle at a break, late goals, and it just always seems to be a constant in our game. I'm going to go back and look at how many goals in the quarter were kicked, or the last goal was kicked by us compared to our opponents, but it just feels like every week it is most of the time our opponents getting the last goal of each term, and it's always late. But what hurts more than that is the way we ended the game in general, because we really could not have looked worse than we did in that fourth quarter compared to where we were to start the game. I thought we were really good early for 3 quarters, and I was really happy at 3-quarter time with how the game was playing out. Even a loss at that stage, I didn't mind what I saw. There were really good signs from the boys, but the final quarter was far too easy for the Suns, and I get that young teams will fade in and out of games. It's not easy, for Lamar Lawal or Archer May to have proper 4-quarter matches so early into their careers, and I get that we have a lot of those players, but I just feel like we were outworked completely across all aspects of the ground. The Suns seem to have more spring in their step, and it shows by the repeat effort stats. We had 264, the Suns had 316. That is far too big a differential. It was really disappointing, and just the way we closed out that game, it didn't feel good at all watching that last quarter. You can excuse lots of the game and a lot of what resulted in the win for the Suns overall, overall. But realistically, we were in that game and left a win out there. We could have won. It doesn't matter if it's against Geelong or if it's against Richmond or if it's against Gold Coast. If you've got the chance to win the game but lose by 7 or 8 goals, that should never be acceptable. So we have to hope that Scott is grilling the boys for what they did wrong in that last quarter, but also reinforcing the good from the game as well. And look, some of the things that went against us in this game were, again, due to personnel, which it's the case every week now with this injury crisis. And it's not an excuse, because it is looking more and more like self-inflicted pain. The club is investigating that soft tissue crisis, which is good. We're not doing nothing about it. And I thought, we matched it really well with Gold Coast in some areas. I thought the midfield was very even. I thought our forward line was really strong. But our back line did look makeshift yet again, which it is, to be fair. And it sucks because a few weeks ago we're thinking about, how many numbers were coming back and then injuries strike again. But yeah, Laverty on Ben King was a rough watch. Even at times, when I thought he did well, he still gave away unlucky free kicks, which weren't really there, and that has to hurt confidence even more. But yeah, King kicked 4, Blackiston on Ethan Reid. I thought Blackiston did some nice things again, like he does that every week, but he was a result of a few goals against us with his positioning at times. Ethan Reid kicked 3 goals, and before this game, from the last 6 games, he'd only kicked 2. Even Ridley at times. There was one where he went up for a mark where he should have fisted it and it resulted in an easy Suns mark and goal. McGrath tracking Humphrey for that first goal. So yeah, I feel like a lot of this year we have held up really well given the circumstances. I didn't feel like that was the case as much against the Suns. It felt like the Suns were getting easy marks inside 50 or getting space on us where they really shouldn't be space. I don't think any of our defenders were necessarily bad. I just thought that some had down moments, which when you compile it with the fact that some players were clearly playing out of their depth, it's always going to result in a bigger scoreline against. And realistically, if Reid is playing, it means that Ben King has a decent matchup, which then means other defenders have easier matchups. And territory wasn't an issue. We had more inside 50s, 55 to 53. They had 10 more shots than us, even with that even territory matchup. So yeah, I don't think our defense was at its strongest. I thought it was probably pretty poor. We do get Mason Redmond back next week, which should help things, and Ridley will be fresher with a game under the belt. We'll see how we look for that Richmond game. On to some good things, and Damien Hardwick even touched on this a bit in his press conference. It's not just a this week thing. I've noticed it a bit more lately, but with all the injuries and losses in quality on the park, we've actually changed our game style the other way with ball in hand. You'd think we'd try and protect the scoreboard as much as possible. We do that without the ball. Goldie will sit back, Ridley was free often. But the way we move the footy, it looks a lot more direct and there's a lot less backwards kicking going on. And I remember there was one play in particular where Martin went as far backwards as you can go, and I yelled at my TV, and then I realised that it was one of the only times all game where I yelled at the TV for our ball use, because I don't know, at the start of the year, it felt like a lot of our play was slow, indirect, lots of backwards kicking, and that shows with the speed of ball movement stat that Fox have come out with. But yeah, lately, I don't know, we've been more direct with our footy, and the pressure's been higher as well. Damien Hardwick talked about that. When we have that backwards game, there is little to no pressure because we're just hogging the footy, but there is a rise in pressure now, and I don't really rate the Fox Footy pressure factor thing that they throw out in that graphics corner all the time. It's not a foolproof way of looking at things, but it does give you a general vibe, and for the most part, our pressure, which I was impressed by, was matched by a good pressure rating, and it felt like for 3 quarters, it felt like we were playing footy that held up with a better team on paper. It felt like we were effectively controlling the game when we had it in our control. Poor kicking didn't always give us the end result, but for the most part, the way we were playing was not only exciting, but it was working and it was giving us a sniff in the game. And that is really, well, that's the way we want to be playing in a few years. And I said before, we could have won that game, and we didn't. We blew it, which sucks, but the fact that we were in it was really positive, seeing as we were still lacking quite a bit on paper, but also trying to be a more direct footy team. But really, the talking point out of this game for me is the kids. Some of the performances were brilliant. I thought Isaac Kako in particular, he played his best game for the club so far, and he was genuinely up near our best 6 or 7 players, I'd say. He had 17 touches, a goal, equal most involvements after merit. His mate Caddy kicked 3, he was awesome again, we know that Caddy's awesome. Archer May kicked 3, all of them in 1 quarter, and I don't even think May had a complete game, but it was just 1 quarter of dominance where he did it all. He was doing it on the air, doing it on ground level, from outside 50. He's now kicked 5 goals in his first 3 games for a pretty crappy team. I liked seeing Angus Clark back on the wing. That was really good. He was hitting the scoreboard, helping out in defence. I thought that was probably his best game since his debut. Zach Johnson had some nice moments down there. Lamont Lual, he had some really great moments. His second quarter, to end that second quarter, he was awesome. There was so much energy when he was around the footy. For a few of these guys, it's not really about putting 4 quarters together, because they don't do that. It's not going to happen for a while. Like, we're not going to see consistency in their game for another year or two. The good news is we are seeing glimpses, and we know that at his best, Lamont Lual can match it with bigger bodies and bring the heat on ground level and use his pace. Some of those repeat efforts were so exciting. We know that at his best, Archer May can tear a quarter of footy apart. We've seen that from just his first 3 games. We've seen Johnson's ball use out of the back half. We've seen Clark's attack on the wing. We've seen Vigo in the ruck last week. We saw Lewis Hayes before he went down. It's not about the full 4 quarters. I'm just pumped that some of these guys, that shouldn't be playing this much footy or in roles this important so early, we're seeing serious growth or seriously impressive moments and aspects of their game already. And yes, the injuries suck, but the silver lining is that we get these guys into our team and they stay there. Scott said before the game that Clark wouldn't have come out of the team no matter who came in. We bring in Archer May in the mid-season draft. That wouldn't have happened if there weren't any injuries, and he looks like a huge part of the future alongside Caddy and Kako. Our forward line for the future is looking really bright. It's just about how we build those pillars down back. Hayes will be back next year, but also bigger names in the midfield and around the ground, because the way we're building this team and attacking youth in every list management method is giving us more pieces to the puzzle for the future, and that is really exciting in games like this. Yeah, all in all, really promising signs for 3 quarters of footy. Ruined a bit by a complete blunder of a final quarter. We just have to be better in quarters of footy than that. It doesn't matter if it's the first, the second, the third, or the fourth. You cannot concede 6 goals to 1 point. And unfortunately, it just looks so much worse because it was the last quarter. Kind of like the Geelong game a bit. We give all that effort and attack well for so long and then just let the other team blow us out of the water. And yes, that does happen with young teams. I get that. But it doesn't mean it's an excuse. You can't just excuse lapses like that and pin it down to youth every week. That is a very good way to not build a winning culture. So most of the game, really pleasing, but the major vibe out of it is probably disappointment with the end result. And yeah, before the game, I said that to close out the year, I want an upset or 2, not against Richmond or St Kilda. Obviously, I want wins, but I want the Bombers to claim a big scalp against a team higher on the ladder. And the way we played for most of this game suggests that, that could happen. Next week, we've got the Tigers. We've got to go out and win that one to get the morale back, get wins for Johnson and Lual and May. But after that, I want to see us really match it with good teams for 4 quarters. We can definitely do it. At our best, we can match a team for a quarter of footy. Obviously, it's going to be tough to do it for a whole game. But yeah, for the most part, really promising signs, just some massive glaring issues that we need to work on. Let's get onto the votes. Onto the votes, 1 to Nate Caddy, who was really prominent up forward. He kicked the 3 goals, should have had 4 with a poor left foot snap. He was really impactful for us in the forward line. I thought he was, again, awesome. 2 votes to Sam Durham in his return game. He was a monster in the contest, 27 touches, 12 clearances, but 3 votes to our captain, Zach Merritt. He was back to his best after his rest. 40 touches, 12 clearances, 5 tackles, just a typical Zach Merritt game, a Merritt masterclass. And those 2 really gave us a leg up in the midfield. But also Will Setterfield, my role player. He was playing on Matt Rowell for most of the game, and Rowell was great defensively, but wasn't able to get going in the guts with his clearance game. I would say it was a successful tag of sorts, or nullifying role. I don't think it was as hard as a tag. But yeah, I just think the Suns had too many weapons for it to really matter in the grand scheme of things, but those are my votes. Leave yours down in the comments below. Could have made an argument for Kako and Ridley and May and probably some others. But yeah, that is that. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Make sure you like, subscribe, and go Bombers.